Just before stepping out for his high-profile New Year's Eve bout in Japan against Kazushi Sakuraba, Yoshihiro Akiyama removed his GI and had his corner team apply Olay Quench body lotion for extra dry skin all over his body, reportedly using as many as 6 bottles. To most observers, the reason seemed obvious: to gain a competitive edge by becoming excessively slippery. But Akiyama claimed otherwise, explaining that he suffers from hyperhidrosis, a condition that causes excessive sweating and in his case leads to extremely dry skin. It's an unusual concern to address moments before a major fight. Still, despite the fact that the backstage cameras clearly caught the lotion being applied, the referee tasked with pre-fight body checks didn't notice a thing. During the 5.5-minute contest, Sakuraba can repeatedly be heard pleading with the referee, insisting that Akiyama was unnaturally slippery and asking for the fight to be stopped. The fight ended with a TKO victory for Akiyama, but the real battle began immediately afterward, one of controversy and backlash. K1's parent company, F-Egg, launched an investigation. They reviewed backstage footage showing Akiyama's corner, lathering his body in lotion. To verify the suspicions, F-Egg purchased the exact brand, Olay Quench, and tested it themselves. Initially, the lotion didn't feel particularly slick, but once the skin got wet, say during a fight involving hyperhidrosis, it became extremely slippery. Faced with clear evidence, K1 moved swiftly. They overturned the result, declaring the bout a no contest and suspended Akiyama indefinitely. Though he returned to the promotion just 10 months later, the damage to his reputation lingered. Say what you will about dry skin, but slathering yourself in several bottles of lotion before a fight is hard to interpret as anything other than a deliberate attempt to gain an edge. And believe it or not, that case, our number 10 entry, is tame compared to what's ahead. I'm Tommy from MMA On Point, and these are the 10 craziest ways fighters tried to gain an advantage in a fight house. Number 9, spy games. It's an accusation that pops up more often than you'd think. Fighters claiming their opponent planted a mole in their training camp to gather intel on strategies, weaknesses, injuries, or just general prep. But has it ever really happened? Well, there have been some compelling allegations. Most recently, Ian Machado Gary claimed that ahead of his fight with Michael Venom Page, MVP's sponsor, Venom, allegedly offered $10,000 to Matheus Teixeira, a training partner of Gary's, to spy on his camp and report back. Teixeira said he turned the offer down because, in his words, he's just a good dude. Whether or not the offer was real, it paints a vivid picture of how far some are willing to go to get the upper hand.
A message and offer thousands for information, and you couldn't infiltrate the camp. Shut the fuck up.
Perhaps the most infamous spy story comes from Rampage Jackson, leading up to his title fight against John Jones. Recently, on his podcast, Rampage revealed that he confirmed his suspicions of a mole in his camp through a bit of clever trickery by faking an injury. According to Rampage, he pretended to be hurt during training, then waited to see if word of the fake injury would somehow make its way to Jones's camp. Sure enough, it did. That confirmed for him that someone inside his team was feeding information to the opposition. It was a bold move, but in Rampage's mind, it proved exactly what he suspected all along. Someone was spying.
John Jones have a spy in my camp, so I faked the injury. People don't understand my level of intelligence.
Yeah.
Jose Aldo didn't even try to hide it. In an interview, he openly admitted that during fight week for UFC 200, he had spies watching Frankie Edgar's training sessions the entire time. According to Aldo, the intel gathered led him to adjust his strategy. He purposely avoided kicking and using his left hand as much because his team had learned those were things Edgar was specifically preparing for. To this day, Aldo is probably the only fighter who's flat out admitted to running surveillance like that. But when you consider how many fighters have suspected it or hinted at it, you can pretty much guarantee it's happened more than once. Number 8. Frame data IRL. In the world of competitive fighting video games, there's a concept called frame data. It refers to the exact number of animation frames a move takes to start, how long it remains active, and how many frames leave the player vulnerable afterward. High-level players study this data obsessively to find optimal windows to attack or counter. For the record, I suck at fighting games. Unless I'm playing Cassie Cage and MKXO, in which case I will absolutely wreck you. So, what does that have to do with actual fighting? Well, Georges St-Pierre, ever the martial arts nerd, took this concept to the real world. He hired a specialist to analyze the frame data of his opponents. That's right. He had someone breaking down footage to track how long it took his opponents to throw specific strikes, how quickly they recovered, and when they were most vulnerable. GSP even explained it in detail on the Joe Rogan Experience last year. Turns out frame data isn't just for the arcade, it's a real weapon in elite MMA.
I had a guy in Montreal that was measuring frames. Click, 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 click. And by doing that, he was able to know who has better reaction times than others.
GSP wasn't just dabbling. He was literally talking about recovery frames. The man hired a dude who analyzed real fight footage like it was Super Smash Bros. He broke down opponent movement the same way pro gamers study hitboxes and punish windows. We're talking actual frame data, startup time, recovery frames, vulnerability, all applied to MMA. It's wild. Bonus, insane advantage gaining. When GSP was training with Greg Jackson, things got even deeper. Together, they brought game theory into MMA. They would break down footage of opponents and map out potential decision trees, basically flowcharts of behaviors and tendencies. If a fighter did X, what were the odds they'd follow with Y or Z? It was like building predictive models for in-cage behavior. Super high-level, borderline academic stuff. In a sport where some guys still say, I don't watch film at all. I just show up and scrap. Number 7. Yes Man. Back in 1986, Tony Robbins, also known as Banana Hands, published Unlimited Power, a self-help book filled with motivational tactics and mental conditioning strategies. On page 324, he introduces a technique for triggering a surge of energy and confidence. Just throw your fists in the air and scream, yes, over and over again. Guess who read that book? Yeah, Diego Sanchez didn't invent his now iconic yes chant. It came straight from Tony Robbins. In a 2018 interview with Bleacher Report, Diego explained that he was deep into Robbins' material at one point, even participating in one of those firewalk events where you walk barefoot across hot coals. Fun fact, it doesn't burn your feet because coal is a poor conductor of heat, but hey, it feels empowering. Early in his career, Diego tried to channel the power of yes as a mental edge, but eventually he moved on from Robbins and embraced Jesus Christ instead, leading to what is widely considered the greatest walkout in MMA history, when he marched to the cage to face Jake Ellenberger yelling, yes, while surrounded by a literal cross-bearing entourage. Did any of it actually give him an advantage? Who knows, but Diego believed it did. And sometimes, that's all that really matters. Number 6. Lion's Den Madness. So what did it take to become a champion in the early days of MMA? If you ask the disciples of Ken Shamrock, they'd tell you it all started with surviving the absolute insanity that was training at the legendary Lion's Den. And we're not just talking about hard sparring or long runs. No, tryouts alone were notoriously brutal. Just getting in meant putting your body through borderline torture.
If you can't stand up and be a man, you're done.
To even try out for the Lion's Den, fighters had to survive a completely absurd workout gauntlet. We're talking 500 squats, uphill bear crawls, pull-ups to failure, sandbag carries, stair runs, the kind of punishing circuit that would leave even elite athletes wrecked. But that wasn't the end. After being completely gassed from hours of physical punishment, they'd then be thrown into sparring rounds with fresh professional fighters, one after another, who would proceed to beat the ever-living crap out of them. It was a test of pure grit, endurance, and willingness to suffer. The thinking was simple. If you couldn't survive that, you had no business wearing the Lion's Den badge. Whether or not it was the most effective training method is debatable, but it definitely gave them a psychological edge. Anyone who made it through that meat grinder walked into the cage knowing they could take hell and keep going. Not wild enough for you? Well, the Lion's Den delivered on madness. Fighters didn't just train at the gym, they lived there. Room and board were part of the deal, but so was a whole lot of psychological warfare. According to stories from former members, Ken Shamrock would sometimes wake up new recruits in the middle of the night, whispering that he was going to kill them. His brother Frank? He'd sneak up on unsuspecting fighters, choke them unconscious without warning, and then they'd come to with a shotgun in their face. The lesson apparently was, always be ready to defend a rear-naked choke, or risk being shot. I guess. It was total insanity. And sure, the Lion's Den produced some legit greats, but let's be real, they probably would have been great without LARPing as the Spartans from 300 Swords inside a crusty Monopoly-themed fight cult. Number. Fossing against demons. Now I'm not here to knock anyone's beliefs, but this one's definitely out there. Before his second fight with Wanderlei Silva, this time for the Pride Middleweight Championship, Rampage Jackson underwent what he described as a religious awakening. He became deeply spiritual overnight, and it completely shifted how he approached the fight. Concerned by the sudden transformation, his longtime coach Colin Oyama cited the change in Rampage's mentality as one of the reasons they eventually went separate ways. Believing that fasting would help him fend off demonic influences, Jackson reportedly went 3 full days during fight week consuming nothing but water, no food, no supplements, just water, while cutting weight, for a title fight. Whether it actually gave him an edge or not is impossible to say, but it certainly made for one of the most extreme and faith-driven attempts to gain a mental and spiritual advantage in MMA history.
So I fasted like an idiot. I fasted for like 3 or 4 days. And it's true, I got closer to God, but it wasn't a good idea to fast before a fucking championship fight.
While the fast may have helped keep the devil at bay, it definitely didn't do much against Wanderlei Silva. Rampage looked visibly drained after just 1 round and was knocked out in the second. Both he and his coach later admitted that the Yahweh extreme fast left him with no energy going into the fight. Turns out spiritual clarity doesn't replenish glycogen stores. Number 4. Can't hurt Tony. Oh man, this one hurts. Talking about late career Tony Ferguson is rough. It's a tragic chapter for one of MMA's most beloved and unorthodox fighters. Heading into his fight with Paddy Pimblett, Tony was riding a 6-fight losing streak. So yeah, you can understand him wanting to shake things up in camp, but there's trying new things, and then there's hiring David Goggins to destroy your soul. If you somehow missed Goggins on social media or the Joe Rogan circuit, he's a former Navy SEAL and human punishment machine, running ultra marathons, swimming with his limbs tied up, and just generally doing the kind of training that would make Rocky Balboa tap out. Tony Ferguson, already famous for doing off-the-wall workouts, decided that what he really needed was more insane workouts. Spoiler, it didn't help. With Goggins in his corner screaming, "Stay hard," Tony went on to lose a unanimous decision to Paddy Pimblett, 30-27 across the board. Even Joe Rogan, normally a hype man for all things Goggins, couldn't defend it afterward. Turns out getting screamed at and pushed through ultra-endurance torture sessions may not be the best prep for a 3-round MMA fight. Tony didn't need harder, he needed smarter.
When it comes to willpower and when it comes to like discipline, there's no one like Goggins. That doesn't matter if you mount him and strangle him to death.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. You all that I fucking never quit. You're gonna quit, bitch.
Number 3, prank calling a Gracie. This is legitimately one of the most bizarre and hilarious stories in MMA history. The year was 1995. Renzo Gracie was competing in a single-night tournament called World Combat Championship 1 First Strike, which was basically a straight-up UFC knockoff. His first opponent? A Dutch judoka named Ben Spijkers, though apparently it's pronounced Spikers. Fun fact, Spijkers means nails in Dutch, so for the sake of drama, we're just gonna call him Ben Nails. Now, Ben wasn't some random guy off the street. He was a legit 3-time Olympian in judo and had taken home a bronze medal in 1988. But this was 1995, and going up against a Gracie in a cage fight back then usually meant one thing. You were about to get choked out on pay-per-view. And that's exactly what happened. Nails got an early takedown, sure, but quickly found himself belly down, eating elbows, and ultimately getting choked unconscious, with his own GI, no less. Textbook Gracie domination. But here's where things get spicy. After the ref stepped in, Renzo, clearly still heated, kicked Ben, and then stepped on his head. At first glance, it looked like a hot-headed overreaction. But as the story goes, there was some serious pre-fight trolling going on behind the scenes. Allegedly, Ben Nails had prank-called Renzo's hotel room all night before the fight to mess with his sleep, just ringing the phone over and over, keeping Renzo awake. On top of that, at the pre-fight press conference, he reportedly told Renzo, "You have eyes like my girlfriend. So yeah, turns out you probably shouldn't taunt a Gracie the night before you fight them, especially one with elbows and a temper."
What the hell is even that?
He was talking trash at the weigh-ins too. So basically, the guy thought he was hot Ikaitan, that his Olympic-level mind games and judo swagger would rattle Renzo Gracie. But his mental warfare amounted to prank calls, weird flirty insults, and trash talk. All it actually got him was choked out with his own GI and stomped on after the bell. Not exactly a masterclass in psychological warfare. Number 2. Chamber of Solitude. We've seen some wild stuff already. Rampage's fasts, Diego's firewalks, but none of that touches the level of sheer madness Yuri Prochaska goes to in search of an edge. The man literally lives like a samurai monk crossed with an anime character. Let's start with the obvious insanity. Before his rematch with Alex Pereira, Yuri openly asked Alex not to use his shaman leading up to the fight because it might give him an unfair spiritual advantage. Yes, seriously. He later admitted his own attempts at tapping into mystical energy threw him off completely. But that's just the beginning of the Yuri iceberg. We're talking about a guy who voluntarily locks himself in pitch black isolation for 3 days straight. No food, barely any water, no light, just Yuri and his mind. This isn't a spa float tank situation. This is monk-level sensory deprivation, the kind that breaks most people. Still not impressed? Try 500 tree punches a day. Shadowboxing on frozen lakes. Hiring movement coaches to help him mimic the fluidity of zebras. Yes, zebras. The man literally trains to channel animals. Somehow it works. Yuri Prochaska might be one of the most uniquely wired athletes to ever enter a cage. And while his methods seem insane, he's made them part of his edge, physically, mentally, and spiritually. But believe it or not, even Yuri's ritualistic chaos can't top our final entry. Number 1. The Cursed Painting. Jason DeLucia was an absolute lunatic. Just listen to what inspired him to head to California in the first place.
I moved to Los Angeles to answer a challenge that Steven Seagal made in Black Belt magazine. He said that anybody who wanted to fight him could go to his dojo and challenge him and be prepared to fight to the death, and he never came.
Now, a fight to the death with Casey Ryback is one thing, but this next entry, it's hands down the wildest Randirade I've ever heard in this sport. There are 2 versions of this story, the legend and the so-called reality, at least according to Jason DeLucia himself. Let's start with the legend. If you poke around the internet for long enough, you'll come across some variation of this tale. Jason DeLucia, down 2 fights to Bas Rutten, was about to face him a 3rd time. Desperate for an edge, he decided to paint a portrait of Bas. But it didn't stop there. He allegedly asked Rutten to contribute a drop of his own blood to the painting. For some reason, Bas agrees. And according to the myth, DeLucia then placed a curse on the painting in an attempt to beat Bas, one so powerful it literally broke Rutten's liver. That's right, a cursed painting, a shattered liver. Full MMA voodoo. But, according to DeLucia himself, that's not quite how it went down. In a much more grounded, but still completely nuts version he shared on the excellent Lights Out podcast, it wasn't about revenge or curses at all. Instead, the whole bizarre ritual was actually done to help a teammate, specifically a debuting Frank Shamrock who was about to face Bas Rutten. According to Jason, the painting and the ritual were meant to transfer energy, not curse anyone. No blood pact, no black magic, just weird spiritual vibes to help Frank in his fight prep. Still, whether you believe the legend or the reality, there's no denying this is one of the most absolutely unhinged attempts at gaining an advantage. In MMA history, a cursed painting? That's not a strategy. That's a horror movie.
The nature of the Wiccan spell is it has to be done for the benefit of somebody else. That's what it's done for. I took a drop of Frank's blood and a drop of my blood. And this picture was for Frank's sake.
Now, I'm not saying that magical paintings are the ideal foundation for a successful MMA career, but hey, Frank Shamrock did go on to win his debut against Bas Rutten via majority decision. So, who's laughing now? Well, I am, but you. Know who's not? The editor of this video? Max Randall. The man's a wizard. Seriously, give him a follow on his socials and check out his incredible YouTube channel. And of course, a massive shout out to Noah, wherever he is.
How's Noah, huh? Yeah, shoot you him now.
He's a channel member who dropped this list idea during one of our live writers' meetings. Huge shout out to Noah, though, for the inspiration. If you want to be awesome like Noah and the rest of our members' crew, hit that joint button and become part of the squad. Don't forget to like, comment, and tag, subscribe for more absolutely unhinged stories from the wild world of MMA. Drop a comment below and let us know which crazy advantage attempt left you the most baffled. Thanks so much for watching. Be good out there, you hear?